HACKney Carriage, hacking health across London with me, Salka from Appeal World ACV, learning from the experts.
Fasting kills me. People talk about fasting like it is a cure-all and a fix-all.
Let's talk about the effects of high blood sugar, not just in the short term, but the long term.
And it's really empowering when you feel the difference.
The field of medicine is moving beyond the prescription pad. It's becoming more intuitive, it's becoming holistic.
It feels like there's some symptoms that are really common. Well, welcome to the HACKney Carriage,
Thank
Jamie.
you for having me.
I've only scratched the surface of what breathwork is, and it's so amazing what we can do, and it's free. We all have it. We don't need to go anywhere, but to facilitate our breath is important.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited to have this conversation
excited to be
today.
here.
But to rewind, why did you go into breathwork, and how long ago was it, and where did the passion grow?
Yeah, so I discovered breathwork at a time in my life where I was having a lot of challenges with my mental health. So it's about probably 8 years ago now where I first discovered it, when I was experiencing a lot of anxiety. I was experiencing panic attacks in my early 20s and just in a really very challenging place, just struggling a lot. And I was at that time as well, very closed-minded, very closed off to anything that might have helped me. I was not really able to ask for help or look for help, and it took me a long time after first hearing about breathwork to even consider, stepping into a space, stepping into a class. And fortunately I did, and it was, as I said, about 8 years ago, and I spent probably the next 2.5 years really diving into my own practice and exploring it on a personal level to see really what it could do for me, and it did so much for me, and that's initially where I suppose my passion for it came from. It was a personal journey that then gave me so much, and I had a couple of particular experiences with breathwork where the shift in me, and other people saw it and I saw it in myself, was so profound that I felt just compelled to see if there were a way for me to share that with other people, because I'd been in such a challenging place personally, and to come out the other side of that, I was having near daily panic attacks, and then I've not had a panic attack in probably coming up to 5.5, 6 years, and so the shift is pretty tangible, and undeniable. And I was such a skeptic. I wanted to not believe in it, and then it just became hard. Hard to ignore.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, I didn't believe in it first. Whenever I felt anxious or agitated or anything like that, or my mum or anyone, maybe a colleague would just say, "Just breathe," and I would find that so annoying.
I think most people still do, right? I think it's very blanket advice, and it comes from a good place.
It comes from a good place, but it's about how you breathe. Because can't you also, if you breathe, if you're hyperventilating, you're breathing, but you're not doing anything good for you in that moment. I've studied method acting, and I love my teacher, Sam Rumbelow. He's amazing, and it's all about the relaxation exercise. And it's like a long exhale, and not like and it sounds, whenever I explain it to people what that relaxation exercise involves, it sounds really kind of weird, but I feel so relaxed afterwards and so present, but I didn't know why, and now a few years later I'm like, it slows down my heart rate, and it's incredible. So I really try to, whenever there is a testing moment, to focus on my exhale and stuff.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you, because there are different breathworks, isn't it? Different practices, and you don't always focus on the exhale, is it? But if you're anxious or nervous, or the heartbeat is racing, what would you do?
It's a good question. I think something that has evolved through my personal practice and how I work with other people is treading this fine line of not trying to demonize or push away what we might label as negative feelings or experiences. So anxiety being an obvious one, and the one we're talking about here. There are aspects of kind of the personal development world that I think try and go, you don't want to feel anxious, so we put it in a box and we put it to one side, and we know pretty well, most of us, that if we do that, these things find another way to surface. It's like whack-a-mole. It'll find a way to come up. And so the first piece is that acknowledgement of what you're feeling, and it being okay, and not going, I'm broken or I'm defective or whatever it might be. Actually just being okay with it. And quite a lot of the time that can take a bit of the sting out of the feeling itself. So rather than resisting it, accepting it, and then working with your body, with your nervous system, to create a change in that. So if the anxiety is intense and you want to kind of lower that, then the simple sort of fundamental principles are around slowing your breathing rate. So just simply, whether it's through in and out of the nose, in through the nose, out of the mouth, whatever the method is, just reducing your breathing rate, lowering your heart rate, just slowing everything down. Then you can get into slightly more, I guess, intricate applications where you are extending your exhale, where you might use something like humming, where you might use short breath holds. There's a technique that I love, which is 4-4-8 breathing, which is in for 4, holding 4, and then out for 8. And so you've got a short hold at the top, and then you've got a nice long exhale. And we know that exhale and the hold will work with that parasympathetic rest and digest response within the nervous system, just to slow everything down.
Is that something good to do after you've eaten or before you've eaten, sort of thing?
I'd say before.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think a lot of people actually face digestive issues from chronic stress, because we go, work, fast pace, we're moving from one thing to the next, then we sit and eat and we're scrolling or we're watching TV, and we're eating quickly because we've got somewhere to be, and we wonder why we then have gut problems and challenges from that side of things as well.
But how long would you do the 4-4-8?
Anywhere, I'd say to people, if you do that once, great, you might feel a slight difference. If you do it 3 times, even better. If you do it for 5 minutes, even better. I'd say for most people, something that is accessible would be sort of 2 to 5 minutes. It's just like a short reset. If you've got 5 to 10 minutes, even better. If you've got 10 to 20 minutes, that's going to be, the more we do this stuff, the better.
So
No,
you
that's
set yourself
really good.
a target. You personally, do you have a daily target? Does it depend
So
how you feel?
it's interesting, yeah. Sort of, I wouldn't say target, but I'd say an ideal day for me would be 10 to 15 minutes first thing, 10 to 15 minutes towards the end of the day, and then if I can find 5 minutes throughout the day, kind of small little breaks just to reset. Because I think a lot of the challenges that I see people facing, and I've seen it myself, is we don't pause. So it's like just one thing onto the next, onto the next, onto the next, and then we struggle to sleep, we struggle to switch off, and actually it's going, we need to create sort of the flicking on and off. So it's like be on when you want to be on, but then slow down again. And so those little breaks throughout the day are really, really helpful.
Okay.
But yeah, for me, what I aim for, and I always say to my clients, if you're hitting 80% of perfect, then that's good, because life happens, right? So I think for me, the optimal would be 10 to 15 minutes first thing and in the evening, and then if I can squeeze some bits throughout the day, then even better.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
How's your morning routine looking?
Varies.
Do you have a routine that you...
It really varies. So that is probably the non-negotiable for me will be a period. Sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 20 minutes, sometimes it's somewhere in between, of stillness and time to myself. So it might be breath work, it might be meditation, it might be journaling, but just some kind of reflective pause to start the day. From there, for me, the best mornings are the slowest mornings. So the slower I can take it, the better. That doesn't always happen, obviously, because life happens, and my partner's daughter is 7 and she doesn't really buy into morning routines just yet. So that tends to be where I'm like, okay, what's the reality? Like meeting reality on reality's terms. Can I find that time after the school run? Can I find that time, do I wake up earlier and do it then? But really being intentional to find that time where I can.
But it's nice when you talk about 5-10 minutes, because that feels like it's something that, to start with, something that we could do, to find that little gap of time and to just tune in.
For sure.
Because I was going to ask, when it comes to, like, I feel like I'm often on autopilot and I never really think about my breath until I need it the most. So when I feel like really, like, you know, I feel like a panic is coming and I really need to breathe, that's when I just can't access it. But I was thinking, like a reminder. Do you have a reminder, like as a just tune in, or do you feel a certain time of the day and you're telling yourself to step back and?
Yeah, it's a really good point, because I think it feels very human to, and it's something I hear a lot and see a lot, which is that we're much better at the reactive piece. So it's almost like we're doing it when we absolutely need it, rather than the preventative, proactive piece. Like, I think that's just our innate wiring, and we naturally go that way. And so we do have to be quite intentional, and setting reminders and little alarms or notifications is a really helpful way to do that, because for me, I don't do that anymore, because it's just part of how I operate. Like, that's by virtue of what I do, and, you know, the last 8 years of my life, my breath is the check-in, it is the anchor, it is the piece of the puzzle where I go, oh yeah, what is my breath doing? How do I feel? And working with that as a bit of an anchor and an indicator of where I'm at. For me, the sign to do that, and maybe like the internal monitoring system, is when I'm feeling a sense of urgency. That's my sign to slow down. If my body and my mind are going more, faster, I'm like, thank you for the reminder to slow down. And it's just
That's
learning
good.
to work almost counterintuitively to go like, okay. And what I've always found is, and I know a lot of people can relate to this, like, the slower I'm moving, as in like the more time I'm taking for myself and the less rushed I am, the more time I feel like I have. We feel rushed and urgent when we are moving incredibly quickly, and everything just condenses.
Because we can't process everything.
Yeah.
It's so much to take in. So if you can't be present, it's just going to feel like everything is just, you know, going away from you.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's. I also wanted to ask, because it is quite overwhelming, and with life, and sometimes I get a feeling, you know, like a numbness, because it can be quite chaotic life, and like when I feel unmotivated, or, you know, I sometimes have a cold shower or go for a walk or something to. My husband says that he needs to shake the bottle every day to feel good. Like, he needs to do some exercise and do a specific routine to just be able to function. And I like to, you know, tell myself I need to shake my rhythm. But is there anything with... Then I think you shouldn't do the long exhale because you're already... So kind of... Is there anything else, like another practice that to... Instead of listening to really, you know, music, is there anything we can do with our breath there?
Yeah, I think it's a really important point, because this is about our understanding. Speaking of kids in the school run, it is a very family.
They know how
to
use their nervous system.
Oh, they do. Yeah, it's innate for them. We lose our way. But it's a really important part of this conversation, because it's about understanding. It's about ultimately understanding the nervous system and going. There's a lot of people in my industry who sort of tout slow breathing, extending the exhale as this sort of fix all, cure all. It's like whatever you feel, do that and you'll feel better. And I go, sort of. Most of the time, maybe, but not all the time. And to your point, actually, this. If we think of anxiety and panic as this sort of high end of the spectrum of the nervous system, we have sort of 0 and like this midpoint here, and then we also have this low ebb, which is where people might feel lethargic, where people might feel stuck or frozen or shut down or whatever it might be, and that's a low energy state. And so actually, if we're using a tool that slows things down, that can keep us there. And so actually, as you kind of alluded to, what else can we do? And that's where things like cold showers, things like movement, gentle sort of activating breath work. So that would be something with a quicker tempo, something where you're using bigger breaths, maybe using the mouth more, just taking more active breaths at a quicker tempo, just starts to gently introduce some
Through your
energy.
nose?
You
Or
could do nose or mouth for
so
that.
it's nothing is better than the other.
It depends on what we're trying to achieve at rest and at baseline and at low intensity exercise. And for a lot of slower breathing practices, the nose is usually where we want to kind of aim for. It's more specifically designed to be breathed through. But if we're trying to create bigger volume and occasionally kind of more speed, then the mouth can be a good way to get there.
Yeah.
And so, the Wim Hof method is a good example of this sort of conscious, intentional hyperventilation, which
I almost
brings a
felt
bit of...
dizzy after doing
Well,
that.
this is it. This is where there's the
Knowing where to
caveat around it.
stop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's interesting as well on this front because a lot of obviously it's so well documented now, right? The stress is a leading cause of health issues and just sort of life challenges right now. And quite a lot of people, when we're struggling with stress and we're ticking in this overactivation of the nervous system, it can feel really confronting to slow down. And so I work with a lot of people who are quite type A, who are quite stressed, quite anxious, and they come to me and they're like, I love ice baths, I love HIIT workouts, and I'm like, intensity. And I say, okay, every day I'm going to ask you just to lie down and do nothing for 20 minutes. And they go, absolutely not. But that's exactly what they need.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it rings little alarm bells in my mind when I hear people saying like, I need my ice bath to feel like I can function. And that's actually, there's almost like a vice-like quality to it. It's going, I'm not comfortable. I don't like where I'm at, but the opposite feels too confronting and I don't want to go there. So I'm going to stay here and find ways to stay here. And that's where a lot of people end up kind of feeling stuck and stagnant.
Yeah, I know. We're so afraid of just sitting with our emotions and just letting it surface because I just think if we don't feel it, we can't heal it. And
Exactly.
And that's something that I'm trying to do with, I don't know, with this relaxation exercise I was talking about earlier. It all just bubbles up and then it's like a release when it's gone,
Yeah.
So I'm gonna get into that more and I really want to do the 4-4-8 before I eat as a, like a sit down and just like having a moment like that. I was going to ask you what's your other like non-negotiables, but I guess do you have anything else that you really need to do every day? Not need to do, but
like to do.
Like to do. I like that, yeah.
For me, I try and move away from anything becoming too much of a kind of a crutch in a way, because I think even the healthiest of habits can become vices and crutches and escapes from, as you said, kind of just sitting and being. So that period of stillness is a really nice foundation for me, and whatever I layer on top of that. At the moment, journaling is big in terms of just more open sort of self-inquiry. How am I feeling? Just putting pen to paper and getting it out of my head, because I'm naturally quite a kind of heady person. It's very easy for me to shift back up into my head. And from a daily perspective, movement is always a big thing for me. Even if it's a walk, but typically exercise has always been a big part of my life, and so that's definitely something that I feel, again, not that I need, but I notice when I'm not doing it.
Yeah, you can feel.
Just feeling how I feel in my body, and really just being able to stay connected to moving and being in my body as well.
Yeah, I was thinking like how we talk to ourselves, and saying I need to do this, and if I haven't done it, it's like you beat yourself up at it, you know, for not doing it.
Yeah.
And instead of talking, you know, I gotta do this, I need to do this, it's more like I enjoy doing this, because it then becomes more of a, I do think those small things, how we speak to ourselves, has an impact of what we...
I love I can't remember who I first heard it from, but this idea of I get to do this.
Yeah.
I choose to do this. And that, I think, is a huge factor in today's world. There's actually just agency and autonomy, not doing the morning routine just because somebody on Instagram told you to do it. Actually going, I'm going to try that thing, and I'm going to listen to how it actually feels.
Yeah.
And then if it's good, I'll stick with that until maybe it stops feeling good, and then I'll try something else. And we're very, very quick to externalize what we think we should be doing. And a lot of, I really struggle with this at times, seeing it online, particularly of a lot of self-help and self-development being built on this premise that there's something wrong with people. And it's like, you need to be doing this, otherwise you won't feel okay. And it just perpetuates this idea that people are broken, or that they need fixing. Like, so I work with so many people who are like, I had a client who told me for a long time, like, I feel like I'm failing at breath work, and I'm like, I have no idea what you mean. Like, I know what you mean, but that's not how we're trying to approach these things, because it's actually going, I know how powerful breathwork can be, and it's incredibly accessible, but it might not be for everybody, and that's okay as well. And it's just helping people understand what helps them feel good, and then empowering them to make those choices for themselves.
It's not for everyone, but I think it needs to come from ourselves. Sometimes you need to discover the things and try them out for yourself. It's not always nice when someone else tells you. You know, you want to discover it yourself. You want to try out yourself, you know, without telling anyone, and kind of make up your little holy routine that, you know, that you get to do. But
and it's an environment where talking about this stuff and putting it online is very much the done thing. And I've been guilty of that in my life as well. But I do think there is value in, you know, just doing it and living it.
I was speaking to a friend the other day, and we were saying it can be quite bombarding with all the different health things that we should all try out. And I said to her, well, it also can be exciting. Like, this is something new I can try out. So it's all different way of seeing things. But I think taking away that it's going to fix you in that, you know, you can just bring something to your life.
Exactly. And I think there's a lot of actual power to be found in someone making a choice for themselves. I think actually that's often one of the biggest things is actually I've chosen to do this, and that in itself is valuable, especially when so many people, to what you were speaking about, are on this autopilot mode. It's like I've lived 30 years, 40 years, 50 years never really having asked why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. And that's a real light bulb for people when they go, firstly I can ask that question, and then off the back of that question I can make different choices. And I think there's something that matures us when we start doing that. It's like, I finally feel like I'm leading myself rather than being led. And it's very easy on the surface to be led, but it causes that kind of deeper unease under the surface if we're just doing what we think we should be doing.
Yeah, I mean, the days go by so quickly, and sometimes I feel like I haven't tuned in for like a week, and then a week has gone by and I'm just like, I wasn't present, you know. But I love having these conversations, because every time I speak about it or read about it or talk to my close ones about it, it is a way of reconnecting. So I find that very valuable. And what I love about the last few years when podcast has become more is that I just met you. And we sit down and we have a meaningful conversation. It's like it feels, it's nice in the way that we can connect so quickly, and there's things that we all, in our own bubble experience, but we can that seeing that other people are experiencing it as well, it's like it's a sense of connection. Like even if we can focus on the negative things and say that we've never been so disconnected, you know, but we also never been so connected, you know.
Yeah.
And not beating ourselves up all the time for, you know, but discovering the things that, you know, you need to have boundaries. And do you have boundaries of what you need to have, like with your phone, or things that you feel like this is not doing me good?
Yeah, I think the phone is a very good example. So I always charge my phone downstairs. I sleep with my phone out of the bedroom. That's a big one for me, because I was talking to somebody about this the other day. Like the tech is wired to beat our willpower. We all think, you know, I have willpower, I can make choices, but actually it's being developed to circumvent that and get around that. And so actually, again, not beating yourself up when you do end up scrolling and you go, how long have I been scrolling for? It's been 15 minutes or 20 minutes or however long. And the same for me. I know if I charge my phone in my bedroom and it's on my bedside table, I'll really struggle to, you know, I'll go and check the time. Then I'll see there's a notification, then I'm in, and then it's been 5-10 minutes and I go, oh yeah. And I really notice in my body how that feels. Like I go into a bit of a, not jittery, but just there's some anxiety, there's some unease in my body if I'm straight into that kind of vortex of information and being on.
Because you can't control it, and there can be something that you really didn't want to see that day that just pops up, and it's with the phone I'm really bad. I feel like it has a control over me. But just being aware of it, I guess, is a kind of a start. I think that we are in a generation that is kind of now the guinea pigs of social media, but I'm like positive, optimistic about the future. I think there's going to be a moment where there's much more, like for kids, for example, that they can't have it until they're 16 years old, because the brain is not fully developed. Like it's so important for them not to have social media and not have access to internet. You know, it's quite scary. But I think we're just in the beginning phases of it. In a few years, maybe 10 years, hopefully there won't be legal some things. Hopefully,
I think there's something in what you said there around it's always a pendulum swing, and out of the bad comes the good. It's like the bad has happened, you know. We've found ourselves in this place where the tech is really addictive on a mass scale, and so the optimism for me is going, well, what is the good that comes out of that? Because once the bad becomes obvious, then people start working on the counterbalance to that. And so I think what we're seeing, Jonathan Haidt and the work that he's doing around banning phones in schools, and his book The Anxious Generation was brilliant. We're going to see more of that. You know, the tech will keep doing what it does, but actually now the veil's been lifted and we go, like, this is where we're at, like we've got to do something differently, and people want to do something differently. And so we start kind of coming back the other way, and then we'll see what happens the other way, and there'll be a new thing, it'll be AI, and it'll just be, you know, it's always going to keep moving. And I think that's where we can try and fight that and get us and beat ourselves up for it and go, oh my God, how, you know, at times there's a place for looking at the bad and not bypassing it, but also we go, it's happening, so what do we do about it? What can we do differently without going into sort of abject panic?
No, exactly. And breathing is something like that.
Definitely helps. Definitely helps.
So can you talk a bit about the breath space?
Yes. So the breath space was born about 5 years ago, and was really a culmination of all of my personal experiences with breath work and this sort of deep desire to be able to share this with other people. It started off as just me, as a kind of individual practitioner, doing one-to-ones, doing group sessions, and just kind of getting it out into the world. Where it sort of stands now is it's an organization that, for me, the mission is to grow the category of breathwork in a way that is credible, sustainable and long-lasting. I don't believe that I know better than anybody about what breathwork can do and what it is. I've really viewed myself as kind of a microphone for, or an amplifier for what it already is and what it can do, and actually putting that in a form that works for modern life. And so that takes many different forms. So I still work with people one-to-one, do group sessions, retreats, work with businesses. I work with all sorts of people. We have online resources and platforms and courses. And at the core of the work is really looking at the role that the breath can play as a life philosophy, to come back to what we were talking about before. And there's 3 pillars to that. So for me, it's about the role that the breath can play in helping us reclaim awareness, and deeper understanding of ourselves and connection to ourselves. Autonomy, so how do we find agency, freedom and balance in our lives, and purpose, so connecting to meaning, connecting to spirituality, connecting to the bigger picture. And I've experienced firsthand and professionally the way in which the breath can do that in all its different forms, because there are so many different things that we can do, but really helping people connect to those 3, because I think most of our problems at some point in our lives will fall into one of those 3 camps. Sometimes it will be more about purpose, sometimes it will be a gap in awareness, sometimes you'll be out of balance and autonomy, and how do we help people understand what lever to pull when, and give them resources to do that.
So that's in a course, or would that be
that's really the philosophy of the whole
thing.
business. So if someone, I'm actually working on something with one of my business partners now, which is sort of a getting started like quiz. So someone can come in and are they a beginner, or are they more experienced, are they a practitioner? So I offer next year I'll be offering mentoring for breathwork practitioners to help them build their own brands and own businesses. And then we have consumer courses that are either to sort of introduce people to these practices, help them deepen their practices. The retreats, the in-person kind of group sessions and retreats are very much like a deep, transformative style experience where we're kind of going to some of the deeper layers, working with trauma and working on a more therapeutic level. And so we try and offer entry points, but then also kind of evolution points as well.
Yeah, that's a very holistic approach, and I'm excited to hear about it. I was like, I want to go to that retreat, and also if you're surrounded by other people, I think that's another way of connecting, and
community is huge.
It's so important, because I feel like we're kind of losing community in a way, because we don't really know who our next door neighbour might be, but we know what's going on across the world, because of the news and everything. But I think it's so important to feel like you're a sense of belonging, that we have these communities. It doesn't have to be the people that you live close to, but just having the breath space community must mean a lot.
Absolutely. I mean, it means a lot to me. But also to people kind of within that ecosystem. It's I ran a retreat at the beginning of September, and that retreat WhatsApp group is still going. They're still speaking to each other. There's lifelong friendships there that have been made, and it's not about replacing your friends or people from your past or whatever it might be. It's just meeting people maybe from different backgrounds, maybe from similar backgrounds, in a space like that where there's a sense of shared vulnerability and shared humanity. Is incredibly connecting. It's incredibly connecting, and there's a lot of people through those processes that get so much from it individually, but also from that community aspect, because you get an experience, I think, of shared humanity that is often missing, especially in cities, but just modern society more broadly. We're very disconnected. I consider myself quite an open person, but I'm not, that guy on the tube who's saying hello to everybody, because it's just not the environment. It's not the norm.
I try to at least look into people's eyes when I walk past them on the street. And sometimes we smile and exchange something like that, and I think, and that makes me happy. It's kind of the little things like that. I think they're so valuable, because otherwise we're just kind of staring down to our phones, and
100%.
and there's like, well, in the past, that has not worked in the past, but what has worked, it's that kind of community, and like you can count on your neighbors, and now it doesn't feel as safe anymore, I think. Hello. But having that community is so vital.
It's I think it's one of the most underestimated parts of the journey, because it's very telling, you know, the Western approach to healing. It's self. It's very inward, and that's important, but it's not the whole story.
No.
And actually, to have people around you. I was just at lunch with 4 very good friends of mine who I met through my work, and just interactions like that you just go, oh yeah, okay, we're good, and you can sit and talk about life and your struggles, and you know, lots of people have beautiful friendships that enable that, but lots of people are also lacking that. And so I always sort of find it a strange thing that, you know, a retreat or a workshop, we almost had to create a space to facilitate something that should be natural. And it's a bit of a, not sad indictment, but just an observation of how the world is now, is that we're craving those spaces, and so we have to create them.
Yeah, we do.
And almost productize them.
Yeah.
But I hope that this is what I hope through my work, is that through the facilitation of those spaces in a curated way, more of that starts to happen outside, and it's the ripple effect. And actually that's the kind of big lofty feeling for me, is like, how do we make an impact in the world? And it's through that ripple effect of going, okay, the next time I interact with somebody, I'm going to be more open, I'm going to be more vulnerable, and that knocks on and knocks on and knocks on.
Yeah, I do feel like when I open up, I you know, I often feel like the other person is opening up as well, and it's a really like rewarding exchange. And it's sometimes I put my guard down, and it's or maybe it's guard up. I don't know. I'm Swedish, so if I say something wrong, sometimes I can just blame that. But yeah, no, that's so important.
Do you think the difference? We obviously live in such a multicultural, huge city. You spoke about looking into people's eyes. Some people were just headphones in, sunglasses on, not interested. Does it make it more difficult to sort of interact with people? And
I was thinking, I was going to ask you a similar question actually, in terms of, I don't know, do you spend much time back in Sweden? Do you find there's a cultural difference?
I think in Sweden we're more.
Worse?
Yeah.
Wow.
Really?
So.
Yeah, because I noticed like the difference between London and, say, I went to university up north.
Right.
And they didn't necessarily love all the southerners that were up there at university, but there was, they're chatting to each other in the shop. They know the guy in the pub. There's a lot more of that.
Yeah.
And I think London, particularly, it's almost the busier somewhere is. I think there's more disconnect. It's there's so many faces, there's so many people that it's actually like, oh, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like we're colluding in this thing that nobody wants, but everyone's just gone, well, they're not talking to me, so I'm not going to talk to them.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're going,
and if you do talk, then you're weird.
Why didn't that person talk to me?
Yeah.
And then you're thinking the same thing. Like the number of times I've had that experience, I've met somebody or kind of bumped into somebody, and I've spoken to them maybe a few months later. I was like, oh, I thought you didn't like me, or something like that. And they're like, I thought you didn't like me. It's the same. It's so silly.
Yeah.
But I think it is hard, because especially in somewhere like London, it's a bit of a roll of the dice as well. Like you can meet someone who doesn't want that interaction.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people are afraid of.
Yeah.
But I guess we're kind of moving towards something else. I'm just going to take back that in Sweden, I think it's different. So I'm from Stockholm. But then when I go to where my mum lives, which is in the countryside, every single person I walk past in the village says hello.
Yeah.
So I think it's also a city and countryside village, there's a difference. But I feel like in London, in my area, in every area that I lived in, it's like when you're in little back streets and you start to saying hello to the people that that's, but not on Oxford Street.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's nice when it happens, and I think people forget. You only remember when you do get that nice feeling of like, oh, I just had a really nice conversation with that stranger in, you know, a coffee shop or whatever it was. So
Yeah, what makes me really angry, it's when something is happening to someone and people don't care.
Yeah.
It might be one of the most upsetting things, and that is disconnection.
big time.
And when people filming instead of calling 999, or is it 999?
Yeah,
that works.
Yeah, that'll go through. Yeah.
Yeah. I've called 999 a few times. I've been here for 10 years. I don't know. I think I bring like accidents towards me. I don't know, but I feel like I've done it like too many times for it to be, you know, it feels like you shouldn't be close to me on the street. But yeah, or maybe you should. I don't know. But maybe we're moving because community is so important. So maybe the new way of having community is like this. You need to create your own and invite people in. And I think that's beautiful.
I absolutely love it. And I was with some friends last night, and we were talking about dating and the dating environment and that world. One of the guys quite recently single, and he was like, oh, I'm going to this singles event, like in person. And one of the other guys was like, oh, I didn't realise that happened anymore. And it's this pendulum swing. Like, I think we've gone so far into dating apps and the tech, and people are fed up with it. They don't want to do it anymore. So it's like, okay, well, what comes out of that? It's actually going, not necessarily back. It might feel like going back, but it's actually just the next evolution. It's the next cycle. We go, okay, well, what do we really want? It's that constant, you know, realization of what do we actually want, and it's that real connection. And I think, you know, same with community, and that's why I've seen it myself in my work. I spent a year going, I want to create more online. That's where I'm going to live. It's going to be the online stuff. I got 6 months in. I was like, I really miss the in-person stuff.
Yeah.
And I go, okay, I'll start doing more in-person stuff again. And so it's just constant course correction of figuring out and asking that question of, you know, why am I doing the things that I'm doing?
Do you set
and
yourself a target?
What feels good?
You
And
personally,
what do I want to do?
Yeah,
have a daily
nothing's
target? Does it
forever.
depend?
Exactly.
on how you feel?
Exactly.
It's interesting,
I used to
I
work
wouldn't
in
say
hospitality,
target,
and I
but I'd
realised
say
after meeting hundreds of people every day
an ideal day for
that we
me
were
would
very
be
similar.
10 to 15
You know,
minutes.
and I'm not afraid of people anymore.
Yeah.
In that way. So I think it's beautiful to open up and to meet. And you know, I was thinking about the dating thing, and my grandparents, you know, they met at the dance at the town hall. You know, that's back in the day. But yeah, no, it's changing now.
It is. It's a different world.
But thank you for like joining us, and I just want to ask, like, what's the future for Breastspace and for you?
Yeah, the future. So the Breathspace is at a really interesting point right now. So 2025 is going to be a real year of kind of growing and expanding the operation. So bringing in other practitioners, more of the same as well in terms of retreats and experiences, but evolving them. But really at the core of it, it'll be growing the team and growing the roster of practitioners. And it's been a real journey for me of realizing and acknowledging that, you know, what I'm looking to create is much bigger than me. So from a capacity perspective, definitely, you know, there's so much that I wish that I could do without, you know, burning myself out. So building that out and bringing in more practitioners and scaling what we're already doing through that philosophy of reclaiming awareness, autonomy and purpose and building out what that looks like. For me, I got asked by my financial advisor the other day what age I want to retire at. And I went, I've never thought about that question ever. He was like, 65? I was like, I'm actually going to think about this for a second. I realised why I found it hard to answer, because I'd be quite happy living the life that I live now until I'm dead. You know, I've made choices to live and work in the way that I do, and I don't feel a need to or currently at least, like slow down, or I'm not aiming for a point where I'm going to stop. It's going, yeah, actually, whenever it is, and whenever I make that decision, kind of taking it day by day. So for me personally, you know, more of the same. You know, I'm in a big kind of phase of equal parts planting some roots at home and some stability, whilst also this kind of newfound desire to go and explore and see more of the world and keep discovering aspects of myself. Also going to be launching a podcast, ironically. Launching a podcast in partnership with a couple of brands that I love, and a very good friend of mine who's going to be hosting it with me in January. So we're working on that right now.
Exciting.
Very exciting.
I love podcasts.
Me too.
I love walking in the park and listening to podcasts that is just like, it feels like you have a friend in the ear.
Yeah.
But someone that is like, just speaks your language, and I'm really excited to listen to yours.
Me too. I'm really excited for it. So that's going to be, I guess, a new thing. But yeah, the majority of it's more of the same, and I really enjoy that feeling. I've been asked a few times in the last few months, you know, what's new, and I always felt a need previously to have something to say there. I'm like, oh, I'm doing this, and there was like an urgency to it. And now when people ask me that, actually, the answer is not a lot, and that feels good. Like,
That's
I'm
so
like,
nice.
yeah, well, I'm still doing the things, and I'm still enjoying it. And when I feel a need, if I feel a need to change that, then we'll see what happens. But
Yeah.
I think right now, just feeling very at ease with what is.
Yeah, well, that's beautiful. Yeah, can I ask if someone wants to deep dive into breathwork?
Yeah.
How would you guide them? Is there a book? Is there any material and the breath space, you know, on your website?
Yeah.
How would you guide them?
For sure. I should probably hurry up and write my book.
Yeah, you should.
Stop promoting everybody else's books.
Yeah, right.
No, there's a great book by James Nestor called Breath, which is it's probably the most recommended and most read book about the breath. Really, really just well written. But what I would say to people is really starting to ask if there's a curiosity, and I wish I'd done this at the time, if there's a curiosity about breathwork, you know, you've listened to this conversation or you've read an article or whatever it might be, ask yourself why. Try and figure out where that curiosity is coming from. Is it through the lens of, I guess, my work philosophy? Is it awareness? Is it autonomy? Is it purpose? And based on that answer, and maybe it's not clear right now, and sometimes it can take a bit of time to sort of come to life, there will be different ways in. But I would just follow the curiosity. From a breath space perspective, from a kind of personal perspective within that, I've got free resources online on YouTube. I've got introductory courses online, as well as just like, if you want to explore on your own and just figure it out, then absolutely that's a good route to go. I always, because I'm biased towards sort of the richness of in-person experiences, to say come to an in-person session, come to a retreat. I do kind of weekend retreats in London and out-of-town retreats as well for people who are sick of London, and just get curious about it, because there is so much that we can get from it. And this is why I'm excited to bring other practitioners into the breath spaces. I know that a session with me will be different to a session with somebody else, even if we're teaching pretty much the same thing. The energy of the practitioner always kind of shows up differently through the session, and people just take their own spin on what this work is and what it does. So finding sort of places you feel safe to explore this work, and my goal is to build a space, physically or otherwise, where there are options for different people based on what helps them to feel safe. So some people might feel safer with me or a different practitioner, and whichever is the safest space for them is the right space for them. Just following that curiosity.
Well, I think you're going to be seeing me and my friends on one of your retreats or weekend courses. I'm really looking forward to it, and I I'll read your book when it comes out, maybe in the future.
I've drafted the proposal and the introduction are drafted. So yeah, the agent that I'm speaking to about it is hurrying me up, but it'll happen when it happens.
But yeah, Scott and I, we were saying like breath is so important, but we forget it. So thank you for coming and bringing some light. Yeah, being a reminder. I think I'm gonna get a bracelet, like a small bracelet, you know, that just reminds me to breathe, like something that is on me that just that could be my reminder.
I love that. A little product idea I'll write down.
yeah, you should do. That's great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you.
You want to try a drink?
I'd love to. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, well, I'm going to give all of them to you, but there's...
What have we got?
We got cinnamon clove vanilla. We got lemon and mint. This is that one. And then ginger. You can, you know, try.
What would you recommend? What's your favourite?
Well, I love all of them, but I'm metabolism. I love this one.
Let's do it.
This is Christmas. This tastes like Christmas.
Perfect.
But then we have ginger as well. It's not for everyone, but the people that love it absolutely loves it.
It smells like mulled wine.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll nick one.
Yeah, it's very Christmassy.
Right.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
Have you got a ginger?
Yeah.
Really nice.
I'll have a lemon.
You have a lemon.